Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Divine Awakenings episode. And I am here with another amazing soul sister who has really been so pivotal in a key part of my journey, really. And this started back in the beginning of lockdown. And so it's just such an honor to have this soul on my podcast today. So, Jen, thank you so much for being here and saying yes. And you have been such a, you know, change maker in the spiritual community, going on your own twin flame journey, being an author. I've got 3 of your books, which are absolutely amazing, and you've done many more, and really supporting people on their ascension journey. And you're very much key to this change in ascension with the codes that you bring in, the wisdom that you have, the fact that you chose not always the easy path to being the way you woke up, which we'll get into, because it can be slow and steady for many of us, and it isn't easy really. That this path, there's it's there's bumps, and there's all these kind of things we have to navigate as well in this human experience. And so for you, you chose the tougher path because you knew it would impact more people, basically. And so your twin flame journey has actually been amazing, and it's been challenging at times for you. And so I connected with you through online and following you when you were living back in Glastonbury, and then you moved to Brighton, and I bumped into you, and I started to do your course, and I did your wealth mastermind course, which brought up so much resistance for me to do that course because of my lack. But I did it anyway, and lo and behold, it led me to then being the head chef at your retreat, and it's just been synchronized from then, really. And since I decided to really go for these podcasts, we met again after a while of absence at Tesco's car park, and it was brilliant. So the divine works in miracle ways. And on that note, I'd really like to open up with just asking you, what is your relationship to that which we call the divine, God, creator, source, and how does that play out in your life?
A really beautiful question. And I think about that every day, and I try to understand it every single day. It's like a fresh new relationship every single day. It's not a static and stuck relationship. It's an ever evolving growth and expansion into my own understanding, and then understanding that that is just so limited in the sense of what God really truly is, that I can only see almost like a pinpoint of that. But I guess I'm blessed to be able to see that pinpoint. Some people can't even see that pinpoint. But where I've been contemplating my relationship with God recently, and I think I'm going to write a book about it. It is such a really beautiful idea. But I had this realization a couple of nights ago, and so this is fresh. Like, I'm going to be writing about this, I'm going to be speaking about this, but this is this is the first place I'm sharing publicly this download that I received. So what I received is that we are all of humanity are cells in the body of God. We are all cells in the body of God, and I myself am an awakened cell. I am an awakened cell. Yeah. A lot of humanity are sleeper cells. So they have the potential to be awakened, but a lot of humanity are not awakened. And it's a bit like that sort of like caterpillar and butterfly consciousness. So the body of God is made up of these cells, and a lot of the cells are like in that caterpillar consciousness. And there are some cells that have ascended and evolved out of caterpillar to become butterflies. And that is a complete like 180 metamorphosis. And so I see myself as an awakened cell in the body of God. And so what that means is that my frequency is lit. It's a light. It's not a sleeper cell. It's not dormant. It's the cell is turned on. Like the light is turned on. Do you know what I mean? Within my cell. And so it's a bit like enlightenment is a bit like a candle. And it's like it's so hard for that soul to be lit by that candle. But that's what happened to me on top of the mountain when I was 21, was that I ended up, doing this trek up to this Himalayan mountain, chanting the mantra Om Namah Shivaya there about 50,000 times. And then by the time I got to the top of the mountain, I went into a full kundalini awakening, and my egoic identity returned as a singular drop of consciousness, returned back to the ocean of all that is. And so that is how I see God. I see God as everything. God is reality, and this idea of us as individuals, that is the illusion. That the idea that separation is a reality, it's only a reality within this third dimensional octave of consciousness. In the true reality, in the dreamscape, in the visionscape, in our imagination, all is one. There's no separation. We're all cells. You can't separate cells from each other. And so awakening is understanding that we are one biosystem. We are one organism of consciousness, and within that there are sleeper cells and there are awakened cells. Now, because of what happened to me on top of the mountain, where I went into full God consciousness, that is a bit like, you imagine you've got like a church candle, you've got like this big thick white wick, white sort of candle with an empty wick, you know, and then on top of that mountain, that wick got lit. And that's one of the hardest things in the multiverse to achieve, is that wick getting lit. But that comes from my lineage, my guru, because I was working not with a guru on planet Earth. My guru was an ascended master, Babaji, Herakan Baba, and so I'm connected to his lineage, which is also connected to the Lion of Judah, which is connected to the Christ lineage. Babaji and Christ are almost like one energy. So it was that which sparked off my awakening, was through, obviously I'd made a soul contract with Babaji, that Babaji was going to be that spiritual force which was going to enable that candle to become lit. You know what I mean? So that is what enlightenment is to me. Enlightenment is simply, so a sleeper cell is just someone that holds that candle which with the wick is empty, but an awakened cell is just simply when that candle has been lit. So that's what happened to me on top of the mountain, and I've been able to maintain that for 31 years. And so as an awakened sleeper, as an awakened cell, it's then your essence. Because I'm a lit cell, it's very easy. I mean, it's quite easy to light other candles if you're lit. It's even just coming close to that energy. Like, and I think that is what's been happening with this mass awakening of humanity, that there are awakened cells that are strategically placed throughout the body of God, which are having an influence over all of humanity. So it's like the awakened cell like pumps out those awakening codes. What is an awakened code? Self-realization, remembrance that this realm is the illusion. In Hinduism, Hindus refer to the material world as Maya, M-A-Y-A, the Maya. This is called the illusion. So this world, where all mystics, all saints, all prophets, all teachers of spirituality, they understand that this realm is the illusion, is the lie. The realm that we go to in our imagination, the realm that we go to every night when we go to sleep, the realm that we go to when our soul exits this physical vessel, that is the true reality. And that is what awakening is. Awakening is understanding that this is the illusion, and that the consciousness of all that is the consciousness that understands that everything is intricately linked. Because that's what I realized on top of the mountain when I had my spiritual awakening on top of the mountain. Like, I was invested in the belief that I was a separate egoic identity. I genuinely believed it, because that was all my society had taught me, that I'm an individual ego, you're an individual ego, we're all just individual egos, and we're all just like bopping along hoping that we don't die and hoping that something bad doesn't happen. Do you know what I mean? But in my awakening, I realized that everything is one. Every single thing in this whole octave of consciousness is like threaded together, infinitely and intricately and intimately threaded together. So in my awakening on top of the mountain, I realized the oneness. I went into oneness consciousness, oneness with all that is, oneness with the understanding that I am a cell in the mind of God. You are a cell in the mind of God. We're the same cell. We're the same cell. But I happen to have actualized my awareness. Do you know what I mean? And that's the only difference between an awakened cell and a sleeper cell, is that the awakened cell has activated their awareness of and remembrance of who they are and of who you are. That was like the first thing that struck me in my enlightenment experience, was the realization, like, it was like, oh my God, like all of my brothers and sisters are sleeping cells, or are cells in the mind of God. All my brothers and sisters are Christ consciousness. All my brothers and sisters are the holiest beings that I could ever, ever, ever wish to encounter. And so from my awakening, I was born with this deep, deep reverence towards humanity, this deep recognition that you are part of the creation of God. Like, you are an emanation of the God source code. Each individual human being and everything within creation is God, is actually God. And so my soul is just in reverence. I'm just like in absolute reverence to all my brothers and sisters, to the animal kingdom, to all of nature, to every single thing that God created, which is literally God created everything. I humbly bow to, and that is what I understand God consciousness to be. And I say that that's Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness is when you recognize, because what happened with me was that when I had my awakening, I was with my soul brother Dean, and I looked into Dean's eyes, and I saw Christ in him. I literally saw Christ. I can't explain it. I just saw the holy being that he really, really is in the eyes of God. And as I recognized Christ in my brother Dean, I suddenly realized I must be that as well. Otherwise, I would not be able to recognize that in another human being. So I reckon, oh, I am Christ. Oh, he's Christ. I am Christ. We're all Christ. Oh my Jesus. We're all Christ. We literally all are holy beings. Maybe not everyone's remembered that. And now 31 years later, I can categorically say most people have not remembered that. But even though you haven't remembered that, it doesn't take away the fact that I remember who you are, where you come from, and the fact that you are an emanation of God source energy. Therefore, I love you and I respect you.
That's amazing. I love your analogy with the candle as well, and the, your candle's bright, and if you get close, it can light that other candle, which is definitely what you've done for me and many others. And so, just going back then on this like awakening that you had, and that light being lit at the top of the mountain, like that must have been quite hard to like get back into society after having that experience, knowing, oh my God, like all these cells are asleep. Obviously, maybe you didn't have that analogy back then because it's a new download, but how did you take that knowledge? And first, before I get that, what else happened on that mountain? Is there anything? Because I think there's other things that you saw, right? And then going back into society, how was that?
The main thing that I realized on top of the mountain is that everything is one, that the idea of separation is a lie. The fear is a lie, because in God's kingdom, only love is real. God only deals in love. So therefore, all the fear that I had ever experienced in my 21 years, because I was a very deep, intelligent, philosophical soul, I realized on top of the mountain it wasn't real. And so I was just like laughing and crying on top of the mountain, going, oh my God, it wasn't real. Like, none of the fear was real. Only love is real. And I realized, I absolutely realized that this is a loving universe. This is purely a 100 million% a loving universe. And how that manifested for me afterwards was that, say, for example, after that experience, like someone was horrible to me, or someone was mean, or someone really, really hurt my feelings. Before that experience, I would have felt justified in some sort of revenge, or just some sort of like, I don't know, I would be justified in feeling very angry and very, very hurt by the fact that someone's actions have hurt me. But when I had my awakening, I basically realized that I was not going to be putting more aggy energy into the vibrational field. And so therefore, if someone, or sorry, if anyone's in America, like distorted energy, or like kind of yeah, distorted energy, I wasn't up for that. So if I met someone and they were horrible or mean to me, instead of me retaliating, which is what I maybe would have done before, I would just send them pink light. I'll just send them pink light. And I still do that to this day, because I'm not prepared to add more distortions into the vibrational field. And so that was a huge aspect of my awakening, was that realization that we're all one. So if someone's hurting me now, often I work with Ho'oponopono, and I learned Ho'oponopono a few years later, which is I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And that means is though, if you meet an energy, or this energy comes towards you that is very hurtful or unfair or unjust or something like that, then instead of, it's a bit like Jesus' teachings of turn the other cheek. That's what it's all about, really. It is. It's like Jesus tells us in Luke, like, turn the other cheek. He's not saying turn the other cheek to buff you one. He's saying, like, do not give that energy that is being given to you. Turn the other cheek. Walk away without drama. But I actually take it to another level. Like, I send them pink light. I do Ho'oponopono. I realize we're not separate. Like, we're all cells in the body of God. And so therefore you are me on some sort of like absolute level. You're me. Do you know what I mean? And so I don't go into separation consciousness ever. I mean, obviously, like, you know, I mean, whatever, like 31 years later, there might have been a single moment. But the thing is, if you do go into separation consciousness, you are always aware, because that is what enlightenment is. Enlightenment is awareness. It's awareness of your thoughts, awareness of your humanity, awareness of your vulnerabilities, awareness. That's all it is. We're not expected to be anything other than aware, you know. And that's what enlightenment is. It's awareness. So if I do have a little slip up moment where I'm like, oh, you know, which is very, very, very rare. But say, for example, it did come up, I would be aware. I would be aware. And then I would be like, cancel, delete, because I'm not prepared to send that distorted energy out into the vibrational field. But there are
It's
many
just
aspects. Yeah.
yeah, it's just catching it, isn't it? And going, oh,
Yeah.
and what, you know, we have wobbles, don't we? Human at the end of the day, you
Mm.
know. And so,
And I am. I'm
yeah,
human. Yeah, absolutely.
exactly. So it's just getting recognizing it, going, oh, and then getting back on, and even doing Ho'oponopono on yourself, you know. And then, and if you judge, we can, you know, sometimes judgments may come up, and then you quickly go, oh no,
Yeah.
so I forgive myself, forgive that person, and
Yes.
all these things. So self-awareness is key, and the more you go within, the more aware you become, and it's that self-realization, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you talked about, well, on the mountain, was it kind of like, because I had a snippet of this experience, like, you know, when Buddha woke, he laughed.
Yes.
Was it kind of like that you experienced? Like,
Definitely. Yes. You laugh for many reasons. You laugh because it's always been like that. You laugh because you could have had that awareness yesterday. You laugh because it's such a relief that that fear isn't real. That was the main reason I was laughing. I was like, oh my God, like none of it was real. All those terrible thoughts and those scary thoughts that I really genuinely was invested in, that they're not real. It's just like a relief, you know. But yeah, it is a very, very, because it's a bit enlightenment. It's a bit like this. It's a bit like we're all these eggs. We're like an egg, you know, and everyone's in these like individual eggs. You know, it's like I'm an egg, you're an egg. My name's Jen, your name's Syra, you know, Finn, whatever, Sophia. Like we're all just like these eggs. Do you know what I mean? And then enlightenment is when you crack the egg, and then you mix the egg, and it's like everyone becomes an omelette. Like we're all just, what actually in our true spiritual essence, we're all just one big fat omelette, really. And so so you get so the cracking element, it's like the crack in Irish, you have the crack, and it's like, so of course it brings in that humor element to be cracked. It brings in that humor element. It's very, very deep, the humor element in the enlightenment process.
yeah, definitely. And there's so much information out there that talks about it, and you know, everyone's got their own different perspectives. And so, you were saying about fear and how it's an illusion and it's not
Yeah,
real. And I just want to touch on that because it can be so debilitating and it can
yeah,
feel so very real.
yeah.
And if it's not real, what is it?
That's a really good question. If it's not, it's of the mind, and so it's a bit like the egg believing itself to be the egg. The egg has forgotten that inside is a yolk, and that yolk is exactly the same as all the other yolks on this earth, and that we're all just cells in the body of God. But fear comes from this idea that you're alone, that you don't belong, that God has abandoned you, that you're essentially isolated in this egg egoic consciousness. So fear comes from being invested in your identity. Fear comes from believing that you are not one with all that is. Fear comes from believing that God's delays are God's denials.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's when fear comes, because it's like that's the main reason I think, like, especially for myself, not necessarily fear, but it's difficult with God's timing, because I've been on the twin flame path for many, many, many years, and there's that it still hasn't quite manifested, and that can be a very, very, very challenging experience. But if you go to the Bible, you see a lot of them, like Moses didn't meet God until he was 80, and then you've got Abraham and Sarah. They desperately wanted a child. They didn't have a child till they was 90. And like, so the Bible has a lot of stories where it's teaching you that God's delays are not God's denials. But I think that is a time when fear can really come in, when you're not trusting fully in God's timing. I
Yeah.
think that's it. And I get that sometimes still. Like, I'll be like, oh my God, have you forsaken me on this one? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but it's okay to ask that question, so long as you have that awareness. Do you know what I mean? It's always about awareness. Like, am I going into that fear vibration? Where is that thought coming from,
Mm,
etc.
yeah. And so obviously you've had this amazing awakening, and then you've realized that most of your brothers and sisters, or probably most of them that you come in contact with, are just asleep, and that they don't know who they are and the divinity that's held within them. And so did you just want to come back and shout from the rooftops, remember who you are? Or how did that kind of play out? And did that
I
change
never
your business or?
Yeah, I've never been a preacher. I've never ever been on the preacher vibe, because I always see myself. I know that I am a queen. I have attained queen level consciousness, but I see everyone as kings and queens. I don't see any difference. I just see humanity at the same level as me. So I don't. It's really important. That's a really, really important point. I'm just going to shut this door because things going.
Yeah.
So I never came back with like, oh, you poor little sleeping cells, you need my. I never came in like that. I'm like, oh my God, you are amazing. You are absolutely amazing. You might not realize how amazing you are, but you are amazing. I can see your potential, because on top of the mountain, I became really, really, really psychic, and I became fluent in soul language, and I became fluent in being able to read people's souls. I can read people's hands. I can read people's tones, and I can read people's faces. And so I'm able to tap into someone's spiritual potential, and the gifts that they have incarnated to share with humanity. So when I came back, I was just like, oh my God, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing. And I've always carried on like that. So I've never looked down. I've always kind of like looked up. I'm like, oh wow, you're so amazing. And I think that's probably made me such an effective leader. Why? Because there's no ego. There's no BS there. There's
Mm,
no pretending that I'm separate to you. How I see myself is, I see myself as a butterfly, and I know that God adores me. And I see my brothers and sisters as caterpillars, but they're going to be butterflies at some point. I may have got there a little bit earlier, but God doesn't favor me because I happen to become a butterfly. You are a freaking amazing, potentially a butterfly. You're going to be a butterfly at some point on your timeline.
mm,
So I don't I have such incredible reverence towards humanity. And so I never ever came in with on a high horse, on a pedestal. If anything, I kind of put myself lower, which is a bit weird. put myself
Mm.
lower, because I was like, you're all so amazing. Oh my God, God made you. And I know God as much as I can know God in my human consciousness. And I know God is like the bee's knees. And God made you. So like you have my full love and my full respect.
Mm.
So that was the energy I've always brought with me throughout my experiences. But what happened to me on top of that mountain was that I became an elder. I became a spiritual elder. I was 21. I barely knew my ass from my elbow. I was so young. I hadn't had any experiences really. But suddenly my consciousness was so elevated and so at that eagle perspective that I became a planetary elder. And so and I still am a planetary elder, very very much so. And so it's like you have that grandmother consciousness in a way. It's that grandmother consciousness. And so how does grandmother see her grandchildren? She absolutely adores her grandchildren. She adores them. She sees their gifts. She sees their everything that's amazing about them, because God made them. Do you know what I mean? um but I remember, like, it was lonely, and it still is lonely. It still is very very lonely, and in fact it's got more lonely as I've got older. Even though masses of people are on their awakening trajectory now, um I think that my frequency has become so refined in this 31 years of being awake, that um it's very difficult for me to find people to match with, to actually match with. That's not to say for me to have people to love. I certainly love everyone, but in terms of actually matching my energy, I've pretty much given up on that, which is quite sad. And I genuinely believe that that will be with my beloved, when I'm in physical union with my beloved. But even he's got quite a significant way to come. Like at the moment, he's still riddled in quite a lot of density and identification with the third dimensional octave. Like he's still kind of locked into the matrix, quite frankly. So even now he's dense, like he's super dense, do you know what I mean? And so, but I believe that when we do come together, it's going to be very fast, because you like much, obviously twin flames is my speciality subject, but the thing about twin flames is that we hold the same hard drive. So all of my enlightenment codes, all of my awareness has been getting fed into our shared hard drive. And so he has access to that hard drive. It just takes for him to surrender his attachment to the matrix. He's still attached to the matrix. But once he surrenders his attachment to the matrix and allows his ego to die, and because that enlightenment is death, it is death of the ego. And my divine counterpart has not gone through his ego death yet. But he will, once he comes into my energetic field and is so subsumed by the love that is available between us. That is what will trigger his ego death. And then once he has his ego death, he will also become fully and completely enlightened, and then we will be able to fully match each other.
Wow, that's amazing. How did it come about that you was, meant to go down this twin flame journey? How did that experience? Because
I've
on
al-
the mountain, did you know?
yeah, I did. I've
Right.
always, ever since I was a little girl, I knew that I didn't necessarily call him my twin flame when I was a little girl. Maybe what would I call him? My husband, or my perfect mate, or something. But it was that I used to call out to him. So even when a very young age, from like age 6 or 7, I used to look up at the stars and I'd be like, we're both under the same stars and we're going to find each other one day. So I incarnated, coded for this union. And then when I was about 14 or 15, I developed a very deep interest in astrology, and I discovered Linda Goodman, and I bought Linda Goodman's book called Love Signs. And in the beginning of Linda Goodman's book, she talks about twin flames. And I must have read that book. I must have read the introduction over 1,000 times. Every single night I just used to read it. So this was from age 16. And then when I got to India for the first time, I was told that I was going to be meeting a very significant soulmate of mine, and I was having visions of meeting this person. And those visions that I were having guided me to the mountaintop where I met Dean. And Dean was the person who I was having visions of meeting. And then I met Dean, and in my visions, his name was Christopher. And the first thing Dean said to me was that his spiritual name is Christopher. And then we had so many synchronicities. And then within about 48 hours of meeting Dean, I had my massive spiritual awakening on top of the mountain. And so I believed that Dean was my twin flame. I thought he must be my twin flame because he's triggered my kundalini awakening. I was having visions of him. I went into full twin flame consciousness through Dean. And actually, what happened to me was that the next day after my awakening, I started getting downloads about the true story of Yeshua and Magdalene, and my spirit team told me what actually really happened between Yeshua and Magdalene. And I was shown that Magdalene was a very high tantrika, and she was born in the temples in Egypt, and she was of the Isis lineage, and that she was trained, and she was like a bit like how the Dalai Lama, like, you know, they know that Dalai Lama was going to be born. She was like that. She was like a holy person that they knew was going to be born, and so she was sort of set apart, and she was trained in very high level tantric practices from a young age. And she had a lot of auntie sisters who were like her teachers and mentors and stuff like that. But it was always known that she would meet Yeshua. And I was shown that Magdalene went into enlightenment at age 16. She had a kundalini awakening at age 16, and they were very similar ages. And then Yeshua was traveling at that time in Egypt, and he basically he was guided to go to this temple where it was prophesied that they would meet. And they met each other, and I believe that, I can't remember if she was 16, 18 or 17, 18, something like that. And through their meeting, he then became enlightened. And so I received all this information. I've written a book about it, actually. I haven't published it, but so yeah, I learned a lot of information about the true story of Yeshua and Magdalene.
Yeah, and a lot of these stories around Mary has been stripped out of her history, hasn't
Yeah.
it? You know, the divine feminine and the power, and it's all about the masculine in Yeshua and his journey. And, you know, the feminine has a big part in that as well. And
Oh yeah. Oh, she's the keystone. She's the absolute
mm,
keystone. But that's why she was taken out of the Bible, because I mean, I love the Bible. The Bible is an absolutely amazing book. And if you really know how to read the Bible, and if you understand it, that the true teachings are there. But I think that there was definitely, well, I mean, the Mary Magdalene gospel was taken out of the Bible for a reason. I might have to get a hold of that, actually. But yeah, the whole idea was to sort of like remove the divine feminine from the enlightenment equation, because without the divine feminine, the divine masculine is never ever going to wake up. Like,
mm,
look at my example with my divine masculine. Like, he is not awake. Like, of course he's on his awakening path. He's like, he's metamorphosizing, he's in his chrysalis, but he's not there yet. It will only take for him to be in the vibrational presence of his true person, his divine feminine, who is going to be able to send forth those vibrational frequencies that are going to allow that egg to crack, because that's what it's all about. It's all about cracking the egg.
mm. And so those who are on the twin flame journey, obviously it was pre-agreed before incarnating
Yeah,
as a human. And
yeah.
so what is, from your perspective, what is the, obviously you mentioned about Mary and Yeshua, what is the true purpose of this union then? What is it going to do on a collective level, a planetary level, universal level?
Okay, so the true purpose of the twin flame union is the realization. It's another way to say it's an enlightened union. So we know what enlightenment is now, don't we? We know that enlightenment is awareness. We know that enlightenment is the cracked egg. We know that enlightenment is the candle that has been lit. And so the purpose is if you are on your spiritual path and you are on this twin flame path, you cannot separate enlightenment from the twin flame path. They're braided into each other. And so on this path of enlightenment, on this twin flame path, the whole purpose is for you to come out of your egg consciousness, your egoic consciousness, your identification as a third dimensional being, to the realization that you are an eternal, immortal, spiritual being, and that we are all one cell. We are all cells in the mind of God. Ultimately, we are all one cell in the mind of God. And so the whole purpose is that you do that journey from caterpillar consciousness to butterfly consciousness. Once one of you, of the twin flame pair, have arrived in that butterfly consciousness, that is going to enable the quickening of your divine counterpart, to also do his metamorphosis into his butterfly consciousness. So once both of you have transcended the third dimensional sleeper cell state, yeah, which is basically keeping everything as the status quo, keeping everything like, oh yeah, this isn't God's world, this is just a physical world, it's all separate from God, all this like bullshit notion that we're all living in this matrix. Do you know what I mean? So the whole point of the twin flame path is to realize who we are, that this is God's world, this is actually heaven. God created this earth to be heaven, that we do not have to have this 70-80 year time span. God made us to live in these bodies for up to thousands of years if we want to. All of our cells are constantly reproducing themselves. And so it's awakening to the programming. It's awakening to the programming, realizing that we've all been programmed. We've all received these heavy duty programs within this third dimensional octave, which are all lies. They're all just lies. And so for us to go into fifth dimensional consciousness, enlightened consciousness, that is the realization: I am immortal, I am eternal, everything is one, there is no separation. And then to be in that with your twin flame, so say for example, I am transmitting 100 hertz of bliss energy in my own enlightened state, for example, arbitrary numbers, yeah, I'm transmitting 100 hertz of bliss in my Jenny McCarty enlightened state. If my twin flame rocks up on the scene, suddenly he flips from caterpillar to butterfly, and he's then working at that 100 hertz enlightened state. Well, this is going to be 100 by 100. It's going to be to the square of. So that the energies and the bliss energies that we are going to be activating within our unit, our twin flame unit, are going to be exponentially more intense than just one individual transmitting from that enlightenment codex. So what the whole point is that we are moving into the new earth consciousness. We are moving away from this old earth. The old earth, the consciousness of the old earth, is the caterpillar that is going through its metamorphosis at the moment, and the earth is moving as humanity is also moving. We're all moving into this new earth consciousness. Call it Eden, call it Zion. Yeah, we talk about Zion in the Bible all the time. We're talking about Zion in Revelations. It says, it talks all about Zion. Zion is the new earth consciousness. Zion is where all twin flames are in union, and that society is built in order to revere the twin flames. Everyone is invested in someone being with their twin flame. So as our society evolves, relationships are going to become much more conscious. And how they're going to become more conscious is that people are going to meet each other and they're going to say, I'm on my twin flame path, and ultimately I will be with my twin flame. I recognize that if you are not my twin flame, and my twin flame comes in on the scene, I'm going to let you go, because God wants me to be with my twin flame. The whole entire universe wants me to be with my twin flame. Do you see what I mean? So there's going to be a much more of a sort of like a maturing and a leveling up in the relationship paradigm as we transition from from old earth to new earth. And that happened a little bit with my relationship with Liam, because when I was in a relationship with Liam, I was like, I know you're not my twin flame, and he said, I know you're not my twin flame, but he said, I'm going to be the man to get you to your twin flame, you see. And I said, likewise, and if your twin flame comes, I'm going to let you go in grace, because the whole point of being on this earth is to be with your highest spiritual partner, because when you're with your higher spiritual partner, it means that you are transmitting a frequency that is so high, that is so heavenly, that is so Edenic, that it's like a tuning fork. It's such a high frequency tuning fork that it just dispels all the lower frequencies.
Mm.
That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the ultimate path, isn't it? And there's a lot of agendas in play that stop that union happening because of the powerful elements that can come about just by coming together. And I think there's a lot of agendas happening right now that are stopping us from really knowing who we are. And it'd be interesting to know from your perspective why you think that is.
Could you give me an example?
So there's so many things happening, you know, like with just distortions, distractions, things like, you know, you could these passport IDs that people are talking about. There's a lot of things that are just pulling us away from just going within and distracting us. And you know, you mentioned the Matrix, and it's kind of like, are things being put in place to distract us from going within and get connected in regard, would you say?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, I love Matrix 4. I've watched Matrix 4 about 10 times. And I am going to give a spoiler because it doesn't really matter because it's a spiritual teaching. And at the end of Matrix 4, Neo and Trinity finally come back together, and then they go and see the analyst slash the architect, and he's basically like, there's nothing more I can do because you two are in union. The Matrix is dead. The Matrix, the Matrix has died. So the Matrix is built on keeping the twin flames in separation. Because once a twin flame recognizes or awakens to who she is, it's like she goes from being a sleeper cell to an awakened cell. Do you know what I mean? And once you're an awakened cell, then it's like it's just like it's like a domino effect. Then you can't go back. You realize that all of the control, all of the manipulation, all of the distortions, like it can't touch you. It's like they can sling stuff at you, but your frequency's too high. And I experienced that as well. Like when you really, really embody and become one with God consciousness, yeah, with like no separation, just purely God consciousness. It's like you get a stake and you stick it in the ground, and then you draw a circle around you, and it's like no distortion is allowed to enter into a God zone. That's just the way the universe was made.
Mm.
And so the lower frequencies can only work if you believe them, if you are invested in this idea that you are not who you are. Then
Mm.
you are vulnerable to the mudslinging and the shots that the Matrix takes at you. But now, I mean, I eat demons for breakfast with a bit of salt and vinegar, a bit of salt and pepper, and a bit of HB sauce. Do you know what I mean? It's like they can't come close
Mm.
because you're in that frequency of
Mm.
light, but they can only affect you if you're at a lower frequency. So that's the agenda, is to keep everyone like paying all these taxes, paying all these like you know, survival, keeping everyone in survival, like, you know, threatening your identity, threatening your you know, online safety, whatever. It's everything is designed to pull your frequency down so that you're not in that God zone. Because once you're in that God zone frequency, it's like they can sling their attacks, but they just don't stick.
Mm.
And that's the whole point. That's where we've all got to get to. And that's where we all will get to, because
Mm.
we will get to a point where all of humanity is an awakened cell, you know, because the sleeper cells are waking up.
And do you think all those cells are going to wake up?
I think that there are some souls that have chosen to not wake up in this cycle. And I think a lot of our elder family generations, maybe you could lump in that category, they've gone, oh no, next lifetime, like, oh, maybe I'll do it next lifetime. So I don't necessarily think that all will, but I think that at some point, a lot of that generation is going to sort of die off. They're gonna like sign their own demise. I mean, a lot of them took the jabs. Like, how many baby boomers took the jabs? It was probably about 90 odd% of them. Do you know what I mean? And that, I believe, when you, I mean, this is my opinion, but I believe that if you signed up to take the jab, you were really saying, I'm not up for this ascension cycle, really. I believe that, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine. There's no one's judging anyone. You don't have to be on this ascension cycle. And so I think there's going to be a natural cull, actually, for those souls that are just not up for that awakening um reality. But we don't know. Like, I can't give you a date. I can't say, oh yeah, it's going to be, I don't know. I
Mm.
honestly have no clue. It could be in 50 years, 100 years. It could be next year. It could be bloody next week. We don't know when this event or rapture or anything, is going to happen. But I do know that it's going to take humanity to reach a critical mass point of awakening. And if you go back to the analogy of the cells in the body of God, and it's like there's going to be all these awakened cells, but you can't fake awakening. It has to be a genuine awakening. Do you know what I mean? In order to activate the sleeper cells. And I think that what happens is that I personally signed up for a very dramatic awakening. And as you mentioned earlier on, a lot of people sign up for the slow and steady awakening. And I think people like myself that are transmitting that awakened cell energy are kind of like sort of, or for want of a better word, like microwaving all the other cells or sending heat to the other cells for them to do their little awakening thing, you know. And so I think that humanity has to reach a critical mass of awakened, and it could be 51%. Might not even have to be that much, who knows? But I don't exactly even know what the critical mass is. But I think once that happens, then we are going to see the collapse of this matrix society. I think we're going to see the restoration of abundance for all, free healthcare, vibrational frequency healthcare. We're going to see the restoration of all the old buildings, the temples. We're going to understand about our true history, about Tartaria, and about the fact that these buildings were created as healing chambers. They were also created to capture the ether energy. We are going to restore our cathedrals and temples back to their old world glory, where they were basically the hospitals. They were the hospitals at the time, where you would go in, and that's why they're called organs. We have organs in our body, we have organs in the church, don't we? Because it's all to do with the frequency. I think that there's going to be many changes in our media. There's going to be a real focus on the enhancement of the human spirit as opposed to the detriment of the human spirit. I think there's going to be a radical shift in architecture, and we're going to go back to the creating buildings that are designed to expand the human soul consciousness as opposed to diminish the human soul. So I think that we are going to see many shifts in all of our elements of society, as we hit this critical mass point, and then that the old octave is just going to just sort of like just slip away, and this old world and this school system, the media system, the government system, the taxing system, all of it is just going to not be able to hold anymore within this new vibrational octave. And that is why people like myself and you and all these people that are holding this really strong awakened energy are so important. And it can be very lonely. That's not to say that I don't experience loneliness, because I do.
Mm.
And that is one of the hardest things. But I think when I was sat at the feet of Mother, Father, God was like, my daughter, you've signed up for a really intense path, but you're going to help so many thousands and millions of people. But you will have to sacrifice relationships. You will have to sacrifice connections that match you. Do you know what I mean? Because I can have connections. I have people reaching out to me all the time wanting to connect with me, but but it's hard for me. Like I want to be with someone that matches my wisdom and matches my, like, do you know what I mean? Instead of always being the
Mm,
teacher, you don't always want to be the teacher and the
mm.
guide, and you want to be someone who can actually say, oh yeah, what about this? Have you looked at it in that way? Or so that's something, and that's not easy. I may say it lightly now, but sometimes, you know, that will have me crying at 3 o'clock in the morning, because it is incredibly lonely
Mm.
to have taken on this role.
Yeah, I totally hear you there. And I think we, I've had someone on this podcast and we talked about, the gurus and why we have teachers and it's just having someone to just bring in another level of awareness, isn't it? Your blind spots that you don't see. It's like, oh, what about this? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I totally get that. Just somebody that to match you 100%. And what you were talking about before around, the collapsing of the old structures. And is this what you're calling maybe, or what many are referring to as New Earth?
Yeah, definitely. New Earth, Zion, um,
Mm,
Eden
mm,
consciousness. Um, yeah, because in a way that was what happened to me on top of the mountain. I became like one of the firstborn of Eden in a way. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
Like
mm.
my consciousness was died from the old earth, and I basically I live in Eden consciousness. Eden consciousness is the understanding that this is God's world, and that we are all God's children, and that we are all cells in the body of God. Therefore, there is no separation. Therefore, we are all intimately, we're all family. That's why I always refer to humanity as my brothers and sisters. That's not just
Mm,
like me being whatever. I genuinely, I know that we are
mm,
all from the same family, you know, and that is being in Edenic consciousness, and being able to look into your brother or sister's eyes, and seeing their divinity, see their Christ self, see their vulnerability, see their inner child, see the part of them that God sees in them. Like when I look at my brothers and sisters, I see their inner child. I see the vulnerable part of them that God loves, that God will always love. And I take it on as my job, my responsibility to love them in the way that God loves them. That's Eden consciousness.
yeah, beautiful. And how do you, because obviously your heart is so open and so big for humanity, and you've got that natural nurturing nature within you, that grandmother, as you said,
Hmm.
how do you stop yourself from falling into kind of the rescuer and have the boundaries and knowing where that line is? Yeah, I see your potential, and I know I want to help you and I want to be there and support you, but actually you can't help everybody in that way where it like drains your energy. And how do you manage to get those boundaries up?
Well, I mean, I've just come out of a situation where I didn't have any boundaries, because I think that came from deep loneliness. And I think that I met a person who I believed was a Christic friend, and because she really looked like my mother, she was the same star sign as my mother. She came from the same background as I have, and I literally projected onto her angelic consciousness, and I had to do that for reasons connected to her children, because I can't really go into too much details, but I failed miserably at that. I literally I did that, but I learned so much from that experience. I learned that I will never, ever, ever in a million years do that again. That I have the potential to project. So this has been an issue that I've had since my awakening. I project angelic consciousness onto everyone. I'm like, well, because I'm in angelic consciousness, I'm like, well, you like me. You know, you like me as a person. You must also be an angel. I'm like, you're an angel, you're an angel, you're an angel, you're an angel. And God's like, no, they're not. They're sleeper cells. They haven't got an absolute clue about what is going on. And so, but that's on me. Like, and I understand that is a weak spot that I have to work on within myself. I did it with my family. My family are very, very low vibrational, you know, but it's taken me 31 years to really accept that. So no, they're my family. They're angels. And God's like, no, they're not. They're not angels. They're sleeper cells. They're not angels. And it takes me a lot, because I see the goodness in everyone. I see the goodness. I see the potential. I see God in you. I fall in love with you. I fall in love with everyone all the time, you know. But in a way, that's one of the sort of the crosses I have to bear with being in this angelic consciousness. But I have learned from the last connection that I mean, it didn't really hurt me that much. It was a little bit awkward, sort of setting myself free, but actually this connection ended up really taking me away from my mission. It ended up stopping me making music, stopping me writing books, even sharing in my community, running courses, running retreats, because this person brought just pure chaos into my life. She was in such 3D chaos, and instead of honoring me for the spiritual guide that I am, influencing thousands and potentially millions of people, she would just dump her 3D chaos on me every single day. And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm a healer. I really want to help you. And so I'd be like, forget about humanity, forget about all my mission to humanity. What can I do? I was like rolling my sleeves, like, right, I'm going to help this family. I'm going to get them out of chaos. But of course, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I sent her bespoke meditations. I sent her free meditations. I sat at my computer and literally made meditations for her. She didn't even do them. She didn't even do them. Think about if someone in my community who really has come to me to get that guidance, if I made them their own personal meditation, you know what I mean? I did it about 5 times to her. She didn't even do them.
Mm. I think this is so key what you're saying. Like, you can take a horse to water, and everybody's on their own journey, and because we see the potential in everybody, and we can fall into that rescuer mode, can't we?
Yeah.
So
Oh, I hold my hands up to that. I hold my hands
yeah.
up. But not no more, Syra. No more.
Yeah,
I've learnt my
I do it. I've done it with my dad, done it with my family, and it's like, it's loving them, and but if they can't replicate that back, or it's that reciprocity, isn't it? Like
reciprocate that.
reciprocating, that's
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The reciprocating that, then you have to put boundaries up.
100%.
And it's not always easy as well, especially when it can feel quite lonely on this journey. And I was saying to you before, I am going through such a deep, I don't know, transformation with going deeper in understanding this relationship and intimacy with, that which we call God, and it's changing my life. And I'm realizing it's so personal, and it does become lonely. So we can easily fall into these ways where we want to seek those connections, but it can be a bit burdensome on ourselves at the same time. So is noticing, is this taking me away from what I'm meant to do, and just coming back on track? But sometimes we have to go through that, don't we, to
Yeah,
share this.
I think what we have to realize is that, like, I have to realize, you have to realize that our peace, like your peace, my peace, is the most important thing in my path. And so if an energy or a connection is taking away from my peace or your peace, then it's not okay. That's not okay. And I think as rescuers, we seem to think that that's okay. We seem to think that, oh well, if someone's suffering but we're not suffering as much, then we owe it to them. But that's not true. The thing that is most valuable that God has given you is your peace, your inner peace, and you have to guard that like the crown jewels. And that's what I've learned now, that I guard my peace. Whereas I thought, oh, I've got so much peace, I've got an abundance of peace, I can handle this chaos. But what happened was this relationship that I had, this friendship that I had, was eroding my peace to the point that I started getting anxiety, which I've never, ever, ever experienced anxiety. But really, the anxiety was my spirit's way of saying, get out of this friendship. This friendship is suffocating you. It is eroding your most prized commodity. The thing that keeps you being that awakened cell in the body of God, it is targeting that.
Mm.
And then this anxiety was like, this is suffocating you, get out. So thanks to the anxiety is how I woke up from this connection. But and now I've learned one of the most important lessons, and that really is, you can lead a horse to water but you cannot make it drink. Which is what I was trying to do with this friend. I was trying to save her, but she didn't want to be saved.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but that's so good. That it's really important, I think, and many people can take a lot from that for sure. And honestly, Jen, thank you so much for coming on. And there's so many more questions. Well,
You can do another one if you want.
yeah, we'll definitely have to get you on
Yeah.
again, because there's so much knowledge that you have and wisdom that, oh God, we can extract out. And it's been an honor to have this conversation with you. And
Lovely. I've really enjoyed it, Myra. I really have.
yeah, great. And how can people work with you, find you, and Your socials?
That's it. Yeah, it's just like Jen McCarty on Facebook. We can put the link to my Facebook. That's
Yeah,
probably the best place. I've got here my book, Twin Flames in the Event. I'd highly recommend that.
yeah.
It's got a lot of my wisdom. Shall I open up and read a little paragraph?
Oh, yes, please. That'd be amazing.
Okay, so sovereignty. On the path of spiritual awakening, at some point we all come to the realization of our sovereignty. Sovereignty can be quite an ambiguous subject matter, so I'd like to devote a few paragraphs to explaining what I've been shown about sovereignty. We are each children of Mother, Father, God, direct offspring of the highest creator in the universe. As such, we are in direct lineage to the royal bloodline. Every time a soul is born, we each have a crown that is placed and kept in our etheric field. One of the greatest illusions of the third dimension is that there is a higher spiritual authority outside of yourself, i.e., a priest, a priestess, or a guru. This, though, is an illusion of the highest order, as we are in fact all sovereign beings. This means that every time a soul is born, Mother, Father, God safely places our crown inside our energetic and etheric field, awaiting the moment of our awakening, whereby we reach into our etheric field and we firmly place our crown on our crown chakra. In the moment that we do that, we truly and absolutely claim our sovereignty, as we are living the reality that there is no greater authority other than ourselves who has the power to place our crown on our head. So I do a lot of work with the royal lineage and the understanding that we are all kings and queens of the Most High, and it's like when you become an awakened cell, you realize that you are a spiritual queen or a spiritual king. And of course, we all have the potential to awaken. All sleeper cells are coded to awaken. And so every single being is coded to come into their sovereignty, to the fact that they are a king or queen of the Most High. They are of that royal bloodline. They are of the royal lineage. Because when you talk about bloodlines, it's not physical blood, it's a frequency. We're talking about a frequency. We're talking about a Christic frequency. We're talking about attuning each cell to their highest potential, to the realization that they are a king and queen, because they are emanations of God's source energy in individualized form.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. What a perfect page to read from. That was
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. And I remember your meditations as well, where we had to, in your courses, where we had to like envision putting the crown on our head and things like that. And so, yeah. Oh, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your beautiful wisdom, Jen. And I'll put all the links below. And yeah.
Oh, sorry, just one more thing. I've got my ancestor ceremony on the 31st of, which takes place on Zoom. And I've been hosting these ceremonies for quite a few years now. And we'll be really deeply connecting with our ancestors beyond the veil. And we'll be doing an absolutely amazing ceremony for Samhain. So I'll send you that link for people to book on if they want to come and meet me in person, meet me on Zoom. And I'll share this video as well with my community. They'll absolutely love it.
Yeah, I highly recommend working with Jen. Honestly, she's doing so much for humanity, and yeah, it's yeah, read her books as well because they're amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here and watching, and please like, comment, and share, and we will see you in the next one. Have a blessed day, everybody.